Hello boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beginner's Java lesson number 18. So today I'm going to go over an interesting concept that I came up with. And so this concept is where we start to blur the line between beginner and intermediate. And so the reason why I'm doing that is because, and I hate to say this, you guys have learned the basics. We are pretty much done with Beginner's Java insofar as it being a beginner course, right? So believe it or not, the question that I am about to answer is actually a question I've gotten on a number of interviews before. And I know exactly what you guys are thinking right now, like, wait, it's lesson 18, these lessons haven't been more than a half an hour long. After 9 hours, we're getting the questions that you've been asked professionally. And the answer is yes, right? But the problem here is not that, you know, what we've covered covers such a large swath of what's available out there in computer science, but it's actually how you can take apart such complicated problems and begin solving for actual real-life use cases. So let me show you an example. So you guys may not be familiar with CSV as a format. It's comma-separated values. So the easiest way to think about this, I kind of drew out a little diagram here, is, and I guess I can get rid of this line, is each one of these represents, so think of this as like an Excel file with column headers, right? So we have a first name, last name, a phone number, digits only, and an email address. And so first name, last name, phone number, email address, right? And so that's how it's going to be represented in the file. CSV stands for comma-separated values. So each one of these maps to one of these above. Now, I've been asked in 2 separate job interviews, how do I go about, if I were to get a CSV of unknown size, how do I parse out all the information there? And so most jobs, they give me something that's a little useful. And they say, here's the column headers. And let's say you have to parse out an unknown amount of data and you need to store it in an object. So let's say that we have this, right? So the first thing I know, and the first thing I notice because I'm human, is each one of these is talking about information that relates to a person, right? So the first thing I'd do is I'd go and I'd create a class called person. And that person is going to have some attributes, right? So we're going to make a public string, and we're going to call it first name. What is it? What? Oh, because, well, I'm an idiot right now. So they also need a last name. They need a phone number, which I guess will also be a string. Let's make all of these private. And last one is going to be private string email address. I have to capitalize the S. An idiot. Okay, cool. So now we're going to have to make a constructor. So obviously we're going to make a person constructor that's default, and we're just going to leave it blank because hopefully we never have to use it. And then we're going to make a non-default constructor. So we're going to do person, string, first name, string, last name, string, phone number, string, email address. And now, I don't know if I covered this last time, talking about the use of the this keyword, but I'm doing this intentionally now, and I'm just going to write this out. This dot first name equals first name. This dot last name equals last name. This dot phone number equals phone number. And this dot email address equals email address. Okay, so let's talk about what I'm doing here. The this keyword means that when I've taken in arguments here, there is ambiguity, meaning that if I were to just call first name, it doesn't know if I'm talking about the one that exists in the variable or the one that I've passed in here. Because remember, I can name I can name this variable anything when it comes in as a function argument, or a method argument rather. Sorry, functions are C++. And so here, now I've made a person, right? And so this object represents a person, one person to one object. Great. So now, let me kind of want to create more than that, just because 3 of them is kind of lame, but that's fine. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to I guess I'll teach you guys how to read in a file, since that seems pretty important. And since I already have, the file library imported, and I've already declared a file to names.csv, which is the path, I guess I'll close that. And I'll close person because I'm not going to work on it right now. I suppose the easiest way to do this would be, I don't want to get into try catch at the same time too. Oh man, the easiest way to do this is going to be probably using a buffered reader. Okay, so the reason I'm pausing right now and thinking and sort of talking through this is because, unlike other languages, Java has like 10 different ways to read in text-based input. The easiest of which is not a great solution for large files. So the solution that's really, really easy is I can do scanner, and we'll import that, and we'll just call it scan, as I believe we have in the past. Or no, I called it input in the past. Equals new scanner, and we'll set it equal to F. What? And I have to add a try catch anyways. Okay, so now I get to explain to you guys what try catch is, which is fine. Alright, so new scanner F, and let me write the catch block to this. File not found exception, fnf, fnf.print stack trace. Okay, so now if you are not scratching your head, you have clearly coded before. So what does all this mean? And the answer is, let's start with the very beginning. Let's start with try. Try means that we are going to attempt to run some code which may contain some kind of an error. Catch means that in the event that there is an error, we first need to tell the compiler kind of error we're expecting, in this case, file not found exception. So in case this file ever gets moved or deleted or renamed or something like that, we then tell it what to do. So we create an object for the exception, and we name it FNF, short for file not found. I usually just grab the first letter of each. And we say print stack trace. So what a stack trace is it will show us all of the sort of debug information. So if I change that name to be intentionally wrong, as I just did, and I run this, the stack trace will be this. And so it says name.csv, system can't find the file specified. And we can actually add in additional information here, right? So we can say system.er.println, an error occurred. That's how you spell occurred, right? OCCURRED. While trying to open the file, it wasn't found at. And then, maybe you want to put in the directory that it looked at, right? And then you print the stack trace instead. So if we run this same code, it makes it so that when there's an error, now we have all this additional information. And, we can, there are ways in Java to print out the directory that you're in. And I want to say it's something like plus system.get, what is it? Like get properties dot get or some. It's something like that. It's somewhere in the hell that is the system thing. You don't ever really have to do that. That's fine. So at this point, we've kind of made this error message a little more customized. Great. So we've used the constructor of scanner, which allows us to pass in a file. So now we can do while. Let's create a string. We're going to make a string called line. So we'll do that, and we'll say while scan dot next line not equal to null, and we'll say something like best way to do this. So when we do this, first let's just start by doing a system.out.println for line. And so when we do this, what we should expect to see, once I add the s back to names.csv, is that we see all the contents of the file. And in this case, no line found is what has come up, which is interesting. I would not expect for that to be the error that we've run into. That's actually really. Oh, right. So if we do like this, so there's actually a better way to do this, I think. I want to say it's scan.hasNext. Then we can do line equals scan.nextLine. I think that makes a lot more sense. So if we do that, then we should, see all the stuff that we're after. And it stops at the end of the file and everything. Good. Now, so we've effectively read the CSV, but now we run into the issue of, okay, we've read the CSV, but how do we process it, right? And so this system.out.println of a line is good start, but we have this data and it's separated by commas, and we need to verify that this field is only numbers and that this is an email address, and that's a lot. How do we do this? And the answer is fairly complicated, right? So first thing we need to do, the very first thing we need to do is we need to break this, right? And we need to break it on commas. Now, assuming that we trust a user not to enter a comma into their phone number, which again, always dumb to trust your users, but let's assume that the coder on the other side made it so that they couldn't enter commas. Our first step is to break this apart, right? And so what we can do is we can use the split function of a string. So what we can do is we can say string parts equals line.split, and then we'll throw in a comma. And when we do that, oops, this is supposed to be an array. And so now we have an array, and I'll just do this real quick. What is it? String s parts println, and this is going to be what's the best way to output this? Just do s, I guess. And so now this is going to just break it apart onto each like one line for each one of these. So it'll show that we have these broken down, right? So okay, cool. So now I've effectively split it into its different parts. That still doesn't get it into a person object, right? Because okay, I now have a for loop, and I have all the different things, but still just an output statement. So now I can do something like this, and again, it's not perfect, but since I know the size of this, I can iterate through it in a somewhat natural way, right? So I can say, let's come up here and create an array list of, what was my last name? Person? Of person. I don't like that. That should definitely be people. People equals new array list. And so what I can now do is I can say people, that's capital, people.add new person, person's capital. And now I'll pass in parts of 0, parts of 1, parts of 2, parts of 3. And that code's a little bit ugly, but basically what this is doing, and I'll let me throw in a breakpoint here, just so you guys can see this a little bit easier, is it's going to go through, and you'll see that so this first line, it will actually cover this in a bit. It needs to be skipped because this is our headers. So we'll eventually have a thing where we implement a counter and say skip the first line, or we'll actually just call line dot next line first. So we skip this one, cool, and then our next time through this loop, you'll see each one of these is put in. And so if you recall, the order that we wanted to pass it in to our constructor was first name, last name, phone number, email address. So if we open this up, that's the order: first name, last name, phone number, email address, right? So that's parts 0, parts 1, parts 2, and parts 3. Because that's how our string was split. So now, at the end of this, once this runs through a few times, cool. Okay, and there's John Smith. So now we have this array list of people, and this contains all 4 of our people, right? And so this might be the kind of outcome that a job is looking for. Just a really quick, clean, simple way of making a CSV reader. Now, let's actually skip from this, and I'll show you the one that I actually submitted to a job. And it looked a bit like this. So GitHub, and we'll go to my repositories, and so I have so this was so it read in CSV and it output XML. So it's considerably more complicated, but XML is pretty much the same thing. And so the actual reader is, so I used a BufferedReader because, again, I didn't know how big it would be. I created an array list of strings, almost the exact same thing I did here. And I, implemented another file called helpermethods.readCSV to strings. So in here, I actually break it down, and the whole thing's about 100 lines of code. I'll put a list in there. Oh, and here's the code to get the directory that you're reading from. As you can see, system.r.println, couldn't find the file at bleh. And so this question seems to come up a lot, and so you just kind of work through each little bit of it. And it's all about just breaking it down into its smallest little pieces. So remember, the set headers bit, you know that's always going to be your first line, is always headers. So you grab those, and then you just do little things throughout, and you just change the way that you write stuff and go forward from there. So, all right, I know that this lesson's been pretty disjointed and kind of all over the place, especially because it was just something so simple as reading from a CSV. But I had to teach you guys so much to do it, right? How to read from a file, how to use scanner, how to read next line from a scanner, how to test if scanner has a next line, how to use an array list to add people, how to split a string based off of where the commas are. And it seems like all of these things are really complicated, and like I've added a lot of stuff. But believe it or not, none of this stuff is impossible to do without using a lot of these more helpful methods. It's just far more complicated. The only other thing I'd like to say before I wrap this lesson up is, from here on out, everything I teach you guys is really going to be focused a lot more around getting you a job. So we're going to do a lot of these where we talk about, what does, like, how do I read from a CSV? How do I, make sure that there's the right number of columns, the right number of blah, blah, right? And so the answer to how do I make sure of this, right? So what if I were to come into person.java and I were to say something, or maybe I do something a bit tricky, right? Like right here. And I create a different function, and I guess I'll create it here because I'm not going to create another file in the last 2 seconds, and just say check digits. And we'll say boolean check digits, and we'll just take a string called phone number, right? And so from there, I could just say like, oh yeah, we couldn't, so if you recall, I tried to do for character in a string, and you can't do it that way. So int I equals 0, I is less than phone number dot length, I plus plus, and what we need to do is we start off with boolean is all numbers equals true, and down here we'll do return is all numbers, and so we'll just kind of do something like this, and we'll say if how do I want to do this? If char at oh right, it's if phone number dot char at I, and I think I have to do like character dot is digit, and do it like this, then cool. Or I suppose we can say if it's not, and we'll just say is all numbers equals false, and do that, and then just do break. And then it's going to return false, and otherwise it will return true. So then we can say something like, if check digits, then we'll do parts of 3, or it's of 2, right? Because that's is 0, 1. Right, cool. And so we can then check that. And what's this complaining about? That it's not static. I know that. So then if I were to throw something in, and I'll throw it into mine real quick, just so I can show you. And we'll say I'll throw an A in there. So if I throw in something like an A, sure. What is this? Add operation. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Cool. So we're just going to run that. And I didn't output anything like an idiot. And so let me do like, actually let me add a quick little thing in here. So we'll just do system.out.println. Oops, that's not what I should be doing. Public output variables. And then we're just going to output each of them. Public void. There we go. So we're going to say system.out.println, and we're just going to do one for each. We're going to say first name plus first name. Oops. And then last name, number, address. Okay, great. So now we have all that. Let's not name it output variables, let's just name it output. Okay, cool, so we've named it output. So now we come up here, and we're only going to add to our people if somebody has all these fields filled out right. In this case, so as a result, we should see first name, last name, blah, blah. We should see Lena Katina and John Smith. And when we give this a run, I still have to do the loop, which is going to contain that, but we'll say for person P in key.output. That's all we got to do. Then we give this a run. And as you can see, my name is now missing from there, as is the header, because this does not, that's not all digits either. So as a result, now we're just left with stuff that matches what we're looking for. And so I apologize for seeming like I was wrapping up the video about 7 or 8 minutes ago and then went off on this tangent. But now you can write that out for each of these. You can write out a rule to say, you know, an email address must be at least one letter followed by an @ symbol, followed by at least one character, followed by a dot, followed by at least 2 characters, or something like that. The rules on validating an email address are absolutely insane and can take you forever if you wanted to. That being said, you know, if I were to ask you to write this, and you wrote me this almost exactly, I mean, this has been 31 minutes. If you were to write me something like this during a job interview, I would pass you through to the next stage. And granted, it's been a bit of a long day for me, and I'm probably not orating as well as I possibly could, but I still think that, you know, this is at least giving you guys an idea. Like, this is pretty much normal programming. This is what you would see if somebody asked you to do this. So at this point, we've kind of graduated into try-catch blocks. We've gone through, you know, using output. We've gone into using different methods to confirm whether or not our input's good, changing something from a file into an object, and really just kind of getting into what you're actually going to be doing programming. And so if this seems like, oh, this is horrible, I don't want to do this, then stop here. Because this is, like, I've had to make stuff like this at my job before. And it ends up being a bit more complicated than this, because there's a million edge cases. But honestly, like, this is the nature of what you do. You take something, you massage the data, and you convert it from one thing to another. So, alright. I think that's going to do it for me. Just as a side note, I could have just as easily passed in an array and changed this to just being a string, right? And then getting or an array of strings, and getting all the information off of the array. I just did it the other way around. So just a reminder that that's a thing that you could have also done. Alright, so I'm going to commit this. I thank you guys so much for joining me today. Let me know if there's any questions you have, and after this video I'm sure that there will be a lot. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye-bye.